Hello, and welcome to the Lund University International Podcast. On the show, you'll hear from current students, alumni, researchers, professors, and many more special guests as we explore what it's really like to live, study, and work at Lund University, a world top 100 university. My name is Fabio, and I come from Napoli, Italy. I've been studying here in Lund for 4 years, done my bachelor's, and I'm currently a master's student in European Affairs. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest milestones for any student, finishing your master's thesis. For many, it's a pinnacle of years of study filled with long nights of writing, moments of inspiration, and plenty of challenges along the way. In this episode, we're joined by some international students who have recently completed their thesis. They'll share how they choose their topics, what the process was really like, how they manage stress and motivation, and what it felt to finally hit submit. Whether you're about to start your own thesis or simply curious about what the journey involves, this discussion is full of tips, reflections, and encouragement. And today we're welcoming Megan and Julia. Tell us a bit about yourself, Megan. What have you studied? How long have you been in Lund?
Yeah, I just hit a couple years in Lund. I'm originally from Seattle, USA, and I studied a master's in applied cultural analysis.
Yeah, and I am originally from Germany, but have been in Lund for more than 5 years, so it's also a few years. And I've not only done one thesis, but two, and I'm about to write my third.
You crazy. Which ones did you do, Julia?
I did my bachelor thesis here in a program called Economy and Society. Then I did a small 15-credit master thesis in a one-year master program called Economic Demography. And I'm bound to write a big master thesis in my current master program, namely Environmental Management and Policy.
I do not envy you.
No. 3 is... It's good that it's the last one.
Yeah.
We have an experienced master's thesis writer over here. That's really nice. Then you can give us many more tips.
Hopefully.
Then tell us how it feels. But let's get us started. So, Megan, what did you write your thesis about?
Yeah, I actually wrote mine about the experience of international employees working in large Swedish companies in Skåne. So what it felt like to be from another country and whether you integrated or assimilated into your office space at companies like Lund University, IKEA, Tetra Pak, Axis, Ubisoft. It was super fun, and I actually came to that topic because partially of my student worker job that I do with the university, but also because I'm pretty active in the International Citizen Hub Lund, which is a great group that I recommend everybody check out if you move to Lund. But yeah, it was something that I knew was going to be really important to me once I graduated, that I wanted to learn more about, and I was super happy with it.
Yeah, and it's really important for all of our listeners as well. All of us international students are coming here and then thinking of, future careers, future things to do. Is there anything interesting you found that you want to share with?
Oh my gosh, I could do a whole podcast on it. Now available in the LE student papers. I would say it was interesting that I interviewed people from all over the world, like from the Philippines to the US to Germany, everywhere. And despite the fact that we all come from very different work cultures back home, like if you were to compare the work experience of somebody from Germany versus the Philippines, it would be super unique. They all were basically saying the same things about what they experienced working in Sweden. Like the being an outsider is what made that commonality. And it was, it's so interesting. I feel like it's my baby. When like a parent gets shut up about their kid. Yeah. And every time I talk to people, I'm like, that would be such a great quote for my thesis that's already written and published.
Love that. Yeah, for me, it was for my bachelor thesis, I wrote a study that compared financial student aid in Germany, so where I'm from, to Sweden, where I'm currently studying, in terms of what is the most fair to the students, which was very interesting. And I studied at the Department of Economic History, so usually a quite quantitative department, and went for a more qualitative approach. So that was very fun, learning about how fellow students perceive the student aid to be. And then for my master thesis at the same department, I went to another qualitative study. It's a pattern for me, I think. And this time I analyzed the labor market integration of female refugees in Germany and how that is facilitated, something that I found very, very interesting. So I would say both my theses were a little bit of a passion project of something that kind of interested me and I wanted to learn about, which made it a pleasurable experience, as pleasurable as writing a thesis can get, I guess.
Yeah.
So how was how does writing the thesis process start actually?
I mean, it kind of starts with a topic. I feel super normal to change your topic. Like when I applied for this program, I got to write a letter of motivation as part of my application. And I wrote like, I'm going to write my thesis about Swedish language acquisition amongst immigrants in Sweden. And although it wasn't exactly what I wrote about in the end, I did include elements of that. So choosing the topic is the first part, but I think all of my classmates, we pretty much changed at least once or twice. Like halfway through the year, we decided on something else.
I think for me, in both instances, what was very nice is that we had a research methods course, which allowed us to deep dive into how you actually write a thesis. And the deliverable was always like coming up with like a little basically pre-study of what one can do. And I think that was quite helpful for me to kind of take some time and figure it out, decide between some topics. But then similarly to Meg, it's also what was produced there often varied considerably to the thesis. So that was interesting. But it was a good alleyway into starting to write it instead of just like starting with the actual thesis course.
We had a similar a course right before our thesis semester where it was basically we were taking a work placement that we did as part of our program and then writing a mini thesis about that, like a 20-page exam, which was nice because it kind of gave you a feel for things and bumped up your confidence in it a little bit. But for our program, we had a 30-credit course, which meant that we had the whole semester to write our thesis from January through June.
That's a lot of time.
It was a lot of time, and I was glad for it because I actually ended up changing my topic. So I only had January through June to do all of my data and everything and like write the actual thesis.
Oh, that's so nice. I think that's really, as said, both my experiences relate to a 15-credit thesis, which is a little bit more dense. It worked fine both times, so do not worry if you also have a 15-credit thesis upcoming. And it's kind of nice because you kind of can just crunch through it. But especially for my master thesis, I could tell that they had similar expectations to a 30-credit thesis in terms of methodology and background. The only thing that changed was the amount of data you analyze. So in the end, I was like, it could be kind of nice to have a 30-credent thesis.
Because there is also a difference, though, in the amount the requirements you have within 15 and 30. You need to write less words, simply. To simply put it, it's a bit less words. I think it's around 10,000 words for a 15-credit thesis and 20,000. At least that was my experience too.
I think we went by pages. I think ours was like 50,000 words.
Oh, that's
and it was like 50 to 60 pages.
I know that for my bachelor thesis, it was around 12,000 words. And then the master thesis was up to 16,000 words.
Okay.
That's why I was speaking that it gets quite similar to the big one, but they give you less time.
So what we learned is that we need to check based on your program. It's a bit different.
It varies so much.
It varies.
And some programs are super strict where it's like the photos don't count towards your page count. Or, some of them have like it has to be double spaced. I know for my thesis, we spent our whole program citing everything in MLA, which is like the humanities go-to. And then they changed us to APA at the very last minute. I was like, thank God we have a librarian who specializes in our program and was there to help us out.
Yeah, no. But it's also important to keep in mind that the word count, as said, doesn't always reflect the effort.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think that's good to know.
It's almost harder to write a shorter thesis.
Yeah, I agree. But then it's like you can analyze so much more data in a bigger thesis, which gives the thesis a lot more merit, in my opinion. As said, the short master thesis, I liked because I could crunch it out. It was short and sweet. I learned a lot. But I also felt like my evaluation part was quite limited and I would have liked to do that longer. So that's good to keep in mind.
Actually, the question is, how does the thesis look like in practice? Because I think it differs a lot between countries as well. Like in Italy, it's more of where I'm from, it's more of a very descriptive thesis. You don't do any research yourself. You kind of just read what people have written before you, like what researchers have written, and then put the data together and like write about a specific topic. But here it's a bit more research-based.
Yeah, that was not the case here. No, it was, for us, our program is applied cultural analysis. So they really train us to go out there and get the data ourselves. So for me, that was through interviews, like sit-down one-on-one interviews. So I made my questions and then I reached out to, I think I did 12 interviews total.
Nice.
And I mostly found them I'm extremely extroverted, so that's something that most people would probably hate. But I stalked people on LinkedIn, and I just looked for people who didn't have Swedish listed as their native language that were working at the companies I was looking for, and I made sure they graduated from Lund University because then I knew that they would feel pity and like want to talk to me, and it worked. Like I think I got like a 95% response rate for the ones I reached out to.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was similar in the sense that my department, both my previous departments, so the Department of Economic History, but also my new department, which is the Institute of Industrial and Environmental Economics, it's a long one, is quite research-based in their work way, and that's what they also expect from the thesis. So as said, I did 2 qualitative theses. My bachelor thesis was a survey I set up, and then you got to go through all the methodology. Is it a good sample? Are there any biases I have to account for? And in my master thesis, it was also interviews. Due to the short period, I only managed 5, so that was a little bit less. But
sometimes that's enough, though.
Yeah, but it was a cool learning experience. And then I also had a lot of classmates who did more quantitative, and then it did a nice regression analysis or something. So I feel like overall, if we can generalize from this, Lund feels quite applied and research-based in this, which I think is very nice. It teaches oneself a lot. It really makes oneself think critically, but also prepares for a PhD if one wants to. I feel like that's very nice.
It's a bit more academic-based, more research-based, and you get to really create, I think that's one specialty, I think, about Lund University compared to other countries, that you really you choose your own topic.
Yeah.
That's another thing that some other countries don't really have. You're kind of given a topic in other universities, whereas here you can really, as you said, Meg, it becomes your baby. So you really create from the start to finish. You really do. You have to think about everything yourself, but with support, of course. Yeah. You're not completely alone, right?
My professor pointed out something that has like haunted me ever since and definitely helped me pick my topic. She said like, your name is going to be attached to this for the rest of your life. So if you choose like this niche topic, let's say you do something about like furry conventions in Malmo, when somebody Googles you, that's going to be attached to your name, and you could be getting people reaching out for the rest of your life asking about your research. So like make sure it's something you like.
Yeah, that's also something interesting to know, is that the theses will be effectively published, not as in a sense in a journal, so it's not quite as professional, but there's an online platform. You can say that you want to lock it, so don't worry if you feel like you don't want it to be attached.
You're ashamed of your baby.
No, exactly. But it's an easy way to put it out there, which I think is quite neat in my opinion, especially because it's such a nice research-based thesis. You can really show that you can do something.
It's super cool. Yeah. Like I posted mine on my LinkedIn, and I don't know how, but like this random woman found it and she commented it, this huge comment, and was just like, this has completely changed my perspective. Like I'm Swedish, my boss is from Latin America. Like, this has changed how I go about my life, how I go about my job. Thank you so much. And no, I was like, I almost started crying when I read it. And I was like, who are you? But it was so cool because I felt like I had actually made an impact with 6 months of work. So
it's nice because like initially one is always told, oh, as a student, no one will ever read your thesis. And it's maybe not many people that will read it, but some will read it. And that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I had a classmate who we had a debate about student aid and what is fair. So I was like, I know about this. And I was like, here you go, read my thesis. And he actually did read it, which I respected so much. And that was a cool feeling. I don't know. I don't think this is like maybe the absolute standard experience. So I like that.
It's something you can use even after your study. So you write in a specific, you can choose your topic based on what you feel like you want to do afterwards as well, from like a career perspective, a research perspective. And
for sure.
That's what you did. That's what like I think many people think about in a way. You know? They're like,
that will also be the case for my upcoming thesis in my new field. I had 2 passion projects that I really, really liked. And it's a big brain topics for me that I have to think about. And my new thesis I'm planning to write with a company, which means I will also still be interested, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to do it. But I'm also planning to take it in a more applied direction. I can use it to find jobs. So I think that's something very good to keep in mind, that you can do that. Don't have to, but it's very nice.
And how does the support process work? You know, we all get supervisors, right? How does the relationship with the supervisor work?
Mine was great. I loved my supervisor. My program basically draws from the Department of Ethnography. So it's most of the time it's professors that we've had at least one lecture from before. But I specifically asked for mine because I went through and I read all of these professors' writings and tried to figure out who I vibed with best and like the sort of voice that I wanted to have in my writing. And it was Kasha, my advisor. And so I asked for her and I got her, thank God.
Nice.
It was great. I still talk to her. Like, I adore her.
Yeah. No, we got ourselves a supervisor assigned by the approximate topic that we were writing about. So they did the matching process for us to kind of align it to the experience that the professors had, which I think in most instances worked very well. So that's good. And it's nice because you can still shape your topic. It's not limited by the professor being like, write X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You can be like, I want to write approximately that. And they're like, they have an idea. And what I experienced, what was very nice, is that you still have quite free reins. I, in both instances, decided to do a little bit more working on it on myself instead of seeking support from the supervisor. And that worked very well for me. But I also had classmates who got a lot of support from the supervisors in the sense that they also reached out for it and got it and then maybe drove the thesis even a little bit further. So one can, at least in my experience, really pick how they want to approach it. There's no like, you have to do it that way. You have to work with that supervisor all the time, but you can also reach out to them as much as you want.
Yeah, you're given a lot of freedom in overall, like to choose your supervisor in some programs, or also in the time you're given a lot of free time to manage when you want to write it yourself, and there's not a lot of classes during this period, so you're not forced to go.
It is very interesting because I know some people who study in the Netherlands and they're like, oh, we have like 2 courses at the same time to writing the thesis. No. And I'm like, oh, how do you manage? I think that's very nice. It's a distraction in class-free time. Of course, that also means that oneself is responsible to scheduling it and making progress and everything, which is another thing that one has to keep in mind, depending how they manage their time. But I liked it because it meant I could like kind of really go with the flow. Sometimes a thesis, you make a little bit more progress. Sometimes it's a little bit less, and then it doesn't like impact the overall outcome, which I think is quite neat.
Our program had like, during the thesis period, we had 1 class a week. I don't know I don't know if it was mandatory or not, but I'm tuition paying, so I went. So I was there. And it was nice because it's the last time you really see a lot of your classmates. Like once you get to the thesis course, you kind of break off because you are focused on your independent work. So this was an opportunity for us to come together. Our program structured it so that it was a topic that you should be like a timeline for your thesis. Yeah. So about now you should be looking for like literature resources, or about how you should be checking your citations. And so it would be a professor or a PhD student in the department who was talking with us about those topics. And it's kind of nice just to meet with your fellow classmates and be like, are we all suffering a little together?
Yeah, great. That is indeed the downside, that you are doing this thing on your own. I know that there's a few programs where you write it in pairs.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case for me. So what I ended up doing, we didn't have that many classes. So I instead sat in a computer room in my old department in the basement with one of my best friends, and we were just crunching out the days. And that just kind of kept me motivated to see another person doing this same thing.
We're making this sound really awful, guys. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Any other tips you have to keep motivated? I mean, it's since you have so much free time and so much like time to schedule yourself.
I think something that I had to learn along the way is like, it's okay if you are not motivated every day. Some days you wake up and you're like, nope, it's not happening today. Like, I need to go touch grass. I need to get a fika. I need to breathe fresh air. Like, sometimes it just doesn't happen. And then sometimes when you're not expecting it, you sit down and you're like, I want to pound out like 10 pages today. Like, we're just going to write it and see what happens.
I think for me, it is also really, if they give you a preliminary timeline of what is maybe good to me at a certain point, do follow that a little bit. In my master thesis, I did a lot of thinking for a very long time, which is very good because it made my thesis better in a way. But it also meant I didn't do a lot of writing or data analysis in that sense. But I thought through the conceptual aspects. And at some point I was like, oh no, okay, now I got to start working. So if you have a timeline like this, it's good to be like, maybe I should start a little bit earlier with the data collection and that kind of thing. So it's a classic procrastination issue in a way, but it's worth it doing a little bit more work earlier on rather than doing it all last minute, because that will be stressful.
I agree.
Completely agree. I mean, in my case also, I've also done my thesis, and I've actually kind of paired it with my internship before. Some programs offer you the possibility to do an internship right before, and that's when I kind of looked at which topics I wanted to research. So really starting early, and that helped me a lot afterwards because I knew the topic. I didn't start writing until later on, but at least I knew what I wanted to do. And so I think that really, starting early, I think it's one of the biggest tips that one can give.
Yeah, a good literature review, so like knowing the topic, is so relevant. It is bound to happen that you write your literature analysis and then a month later you find another whole stream of papers where you're like, wow, this is answering all the questions I had. And then you have to reassess. That's normal. But getting a deep dive into the literature early on and just being familiar with the topic just prevents a lot of like errors that can happen along the way. So that's very nice.
In the US, we don't do really a bachelor's thesis. So this is my first thesis ever. And I know that's the same for quite a few different countries. But because I had never written a thesis and didn't really necessarily know what it was supposed to look like, my first step, I like went on the LU student papers page and I started reading theses from like students of years past in my program just to see like, what are the possibilities? Do I need to take a certain tone? No, this person's kind of sarcastic in their thesis. That's great. That's how I write too. Like, it helped tremendously. Actually,
I did do the same. It's very nice. Look at the previous thesis. You'll get a vibe for like, do I like how this person writes? What are they generally on average adding to this thesis? Sometimes you see something and you're like, wow, this is like genius methodology, and you're of course not going to be copying that, but it can inspire you to be like, okay, maybe I adjust how I research on this aspect a little bit in that direction.
It's also just so reassuring to see the diversity in the published works. Like, okay, all of these people obviously passed. All of them have written completely different styles and like taken their own take on the thesis, and it worked. Yeah, and it's kind of just reassuring.
Yeah, I agree. So I can recommend that.
I agree. Our program manager, that's her first thing they said, that she's seen so many theses and they're all different and there is no one clear structure. No one. And what works for you, it's gonna make a good thesis. You know, whatever works for you is the right thing to do. So there is no right or wrong. It's just about, doing a good research and writing what you feel comfortable about writing. But I think we've spoken a bit about the challenges here. So time management, a bit of procrastination,
a little bit.
But was there anything, I think it's also a fun process as well, right? It's a process where you get to dive deep into something you absolutely love. And is there any also high points that you really enjoyed during this time?
Yeah, these people that I was meeting, I knew a few of them, of the people that I interviewed, but many of them I didn't. And it was just like, I almost had to stop myself during the interviews from being like, yes, oh my gosh, the Swedes do that. Like, I have experienced the same exact thing. It was just, it was just kind of a moment of like, oh my gosh, I chose the right thing. And people were so interested. Like, my respondents asked for my thesis after. Like, I obviously anonymized everybody, but they wanted to see if they could find themselves in it. Like, they wanted to see what other people had said. And yeah, I sent it after I was done. And I was kind of expecting it just, email and then nothing. But I got so many responses of people like, hey, let's meet up. Let's talk about your results. Like, this is so interesting. That's amazing. And I was...
Oh, that's very nice.
It was so nice. It was just kind of like okay, yeah. Like, I felt really, really content with what I had chosen. And like, it's something that I had never considered a PhD before. But I'm like, if I could keep doing something like this, maybe.
Yeah, I think for me, it was really... As said, I wrote about 2 issues, student finance and labor market integration of female refugees, which are quite like issues tinged with some justice aspects and fairness, and that are maybe quite relevant to like recent debates as well. And just being able to really deep dive into the arguments and see how people think, how it works in practice. Is this fair? Is this not fair? How can we improve certain things? I just gave me so much to move beyond this, like, oh, you have a rough idea of a certain debate, to like really know it in depth. It kind of made me more passionate about it in a way. So I think that was really cool. And that's why I can recommend to write about something that you find interesting. Don't just go for, oh, this is a good methodology that is generally well perceived. Let's try to do this. I know there's also times and places to do like that. But if you feel like you have a topic you're passionate about and that fits within your degree, because of course it still has to fit within the topic, go for it, because that will make it so much more fun and rewarding to learn about it. And you'll beat anyone in an argument about this topic forever.
100%.
So actually, writing the thesis is not only about the writing itself. It's not only about the paper you end up completing at the end, but there is a final part that is going to sum it all up, and it's the defense, right?
Oh, yeah.
How is that? Any memories from that point?
Yeah, I mean, I know in a way I was confident with what I wrote. So I was like, here goes nothing. It can only be so bad. I know this topic. But it's another thing. It's another type of nervosity to know that someone is challenging your results, challenging the work that you worked in front. It's usually another fellow student. But in the end, in both instances, I found it rather created a really nice discussion about the topic rather than people being like, you did this wrong. Can happen, of course, if you did the wrong methodology. But overall, it was quite a nice discussion. And part of it is also that you basically attack another person's thesis in that sense. So you get to deep dive into someone else's work, which is a little bit of work after you just handed in your own thesis, but also very nice to, again, get this like perspective of what has someone else done and how did they think about it. So it creates like a nice final thinking about it situation, which I think is quite good.
When did you do your defense?
I think it was like a week or two after handing in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our program was a little odd. And I've talked to the program coordinator about this. It is interesting, but I also see why they do it. Our defense was actually a month before the thesis was due.
Oh.
So our defense was end of April. I did mine online from the US due to bad scheduling. But the reasoning behind that was they wanted us to have time to actually input the commentary and like the reflections.
So nice.
It was a blessing and a curse. I think we had to have like 70% of our thesis done. So most people had maybe their analysis and their intro done, but I wanted to finish all of it because I was going to be going on a trip. So I finished mine. So it was good to have it early. But the defense, my class is so incredibly sweet. So there was never at any point a point where any of us were attacking, I would say. In fact, like we had to read 2 other theses and I don't even now. I just have the word attack in my head, but like, and talk about it with the author. And I know I reached out and said like, hey, this is what I'm curious about. This is what I'm going to discuss, because we did do it in front of the whole class and in front of the advisors and professors. And it's stressful, even when you know what you've done and you've written it and you feel good about it. Like it's stressful, but it was also kind of like a full circle moment of, okay, like I can defend this because I wrote it. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, because actually, I mean, it's called a defense and sounds very serious, defense and attack, but it's really just a discussion, I would say, on what you've done and what your peers have done. Yeah. And there is no, it's a moment where people are curious about each other's work, because you still are gonna write your thesis like with your classmates. Your classmates, you're all gonna be in the same position for a good like 4 or 5 months, right? Yeah. And so it's fun also to see what the others have been doing, because there is sometimes a chance to do it throughout the process. I've had seminars, for example, with peers, so you find out what the others are doing, but the only time where you're gonna know is defense. Yeah. So it's like a moment for you to shine, a moment to also, for others to learn about what they're doing as well. Mm-hmm. Looking back, what are some advice you would give to other students? What was, a moment that you would say, this was a turning point that I've learned that I really need to share with others here on the podcast today?
For me, I would say it's about confidence. When I started my thesis, I had just finished 1.5 years of my program, and I still was just like not really feeling like I knew what I was doing. And a big part of what my supervisor did was just tell me, you're on the right path. Mm-hmm. Like, you're doing a good thing. Yes, go forth. If you're going to do it 100%. Yeah. And by the time I finished my thesis, I was like, yeah, I'm a cultural analyst. Like, I can do this. I know my master's program, and I'm prepared to go out and put that on my resume.
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to, again, the point that I was in a quite quantitative department and chose to do qualitative, which was met with usually like, yes, you can do it, but we might not be as familiar with it. So you got to motivate it very well. Because of course, qualitative analysis has a lot of more loopholes for biases and that kind of stuff to evaluate. But I found it a fun challenge to put myself in the shoes of a quantitative thinker and be like, okay, what would they be like? Oh, but this could be a weakness, or this could be something you need to address. And I really nerded myself down into that. And then I also similarly came out being like, yeah, I can do this. I'm confident I have a solid methodology. And I think just as like proving that it works was very nice for me.
Yeah.
I think to wrap up, I have a final question. How did the exact moment when you were handing in your thesis look like? If you remember. How was
I think I took a video on Snapchat and sent it to my classmate, like, done.
I think for me, it was very funny because it was a few days before the thesis deadline. I was very stressed. I was missing substantial parts of my thesis. For some reason, I just had a spurt of energy.
Love those.
I got it done. And it was 2 days before the deadline. And I did not expect it. But I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's just done.
Yep.
Which was very interesting. And then I handed it in. And then I went to the pub in the sunshine, which was very nice.
It
and I was
sets in
like,
later.
Exactly. I was like, ah. And then exactly, you get a week or two of like rest and you're like, nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very good.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That feeling really is going to stay impressed in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
One of the main moments, of your career time when you're done, when you're kind of
Can't
done.
believe you did another master's knowing that feeling.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today.
Thank
it was
you.
a pleasure, and have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lund University International Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Lund University, you can go to our website, lunduniversity.lu.se. You can also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X. And you can connect with our amazing student ambassadors on Unibody. Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you a new episode very soon.